Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Today we continue our Clone Wars history series. It's the second year of the war. It is 21 BBY. In our last episode, we covered the epic Battle of Kamino, a near successful attempt by the Separatists to invade the cloning facilities there and steal the Fett DNA. Chapter 13, Blockade of Pantora. Pandora is home to the Pantorans. On a scale of Thrawn to the Blue Savages from Avatar, they lie somewhere in between, mainly due to the fact that the creator George Lucas himself plays a Pantoran in Episode 3. Located in the Outer Rim territories, Pandora was a moon orbiting the larger frigid planet of Orto Plutonia. Pandora was loyal to the Republic, but that didn't stop the Separatists a year before from creating a small outpost on Orto Plutonia. Previously thought to be completely uninhabited, a race of abominable snowmen known as the Talls actually had been living on the planet for many generations. A three-way conflict had erupted between the Pantorans, Talls, and the Separatists. Luckily, Republic mediators and clone troopers ultimately stepped in and helped re-establish peace on the planet. A part of the new agreement would be that the Talls would now serve as guardians for Orto Plutonia and keep watch for any future Separatist outposts. It's a setback for the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and they must find another way to gain control over the system. So a year later, Count Dooku tries to coerce the Pantorans into joining the Separatist Alliance by using economic power. If you look at the physical location of Pantora, it literally is on the edge of the galaxy at the end of a pretty sparsely used hyperspace lane. The planet really didn't have any strategic purpose, and prior to the Clone Wars, it was more or less forgotten by the Republic and the core worlds. Small Outer Rim worlds like Pantora heavily depended on regional trade and commerce guilds like the Trade Federation for everything from transportation, basic food, supplies, raw materials, and even defense from piracy. The Outer Rim was turned into a special economic zone by the Republic in order to entice organizations like the Trade Federation to invest money to build infrastructure there. In return, they didn't have to pay any taxes while doing business in this part of the galaxy, which prior to this was pretty much empty. One of the underlying causes of the Clone Wars was the Republic's decision to rein in control of the area from the Trade Federation, who argued that the Republic had no presence there and really didn't do much to support these Outer Rim worlds in the first place. But now with the war in full swing, every colony or planet that is threatened by the Separatists must be countered by the Republic. And that's because if more member states begin to realize that the Republic is incapable of protecting them, then a domino effect will happen where more and more states will leave the Republic. The Trade Federation was technically aligned with the Republic, but it was obviously playing both sides of the war. And on behalf of Count Dooku, it decides to blockade Pantora over dubious claims that it had excessive amounts of debt. Unrest begins to grow on Pantora as basic supplies begin running out. And of course, Count Dooku appears with a promise of aid and breaking the blockade in exchange for Pantora leaving the Republic and joining the Separatists. Things do not look great. Now, during the Orto Plutonia crisis with the Talls a year earlier, the former chairman was a bit of a madman and was skewered by a spear. His replacement was none other than Baron Notoluski Papanoida, a playwright famous for his galactic epics. And yes, this was the character in the live-action version that was played by George Lucas. Baron Papanoida sends Senator Ryo Chuchi to the Republic to ask for aid and force the Trade Federation to stop its blockade. You've probably noticed by now this is basically the same tactic the Trade Federation used a decade ago over Naboo. Senator Chuchi accuses Senator Dodd of the Trade Federation of being aligned with the Separatists, which, believe it or not, is still up for debate in the Senate. Dodd fires back with the good old Commerce Treaty of 1647, which states that the Trade Federation is neutral during galactic conflicts unless otherwise stated. This way, they can only sell to both sides of a war and profit, profit, profit. After the session in Senate, Senator Padme Amidala approaches Senator Chuchi and promises to support the Pantoran people and urges her not to fall for the Separatist trap. Padme, who had experienced a similar situation during the crisis of Naboo, is an expert with dealing with the Trade Federation. Though Senator Chuchi claims that the Pantorans would never betray the Republic, things are beginning to look dire on Pantora as more and more locals begin rallying against the government and demanding that they join the Separatists. In order to observe the Senate's decision, Baron Papanoida has also arrived on Coruscant along with his son Ion and his daughters Che Amanawe and Chi Ikwe, who of course are modeled after Lucas's actual children. Probably should have left them at home because Count Dooku is also very desperate to have the Pantorans join the Separatist Alliance. He's desperate enough to try to kidnap the Baron's daughters. It seems like the Republic Senate will rule in favor of the Pantorans, so now he needs an extra bargaining chip. When Chi and Che enter their Coruscant apartment, they find the lights turned off. Chi is captured immediately by kidnappers, and Che puts up a bit more of a fight and manages to strike one of the intruders with a small statue before she is stunned. It makes sense because Che is modeled off of Amanda Lucas, who actually used to fight professionally in the MMA. Padme Amidala finds out the next day about the kidnapping. She was worried something like this would happen. She also happened to be with Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano when she finds out and asks the Jedi to help the Baron find out who the kidnappers were. The local police are pretty terrible at their jobs. But Anakin reminds the senator that the Jedi can't really be involved. This is more in the local police's jurisdiction. But I guess going to Tatooine and slaughtering an entire village of Tusken Raiders is completely within the Jedi's jurisdiction too, right? Luckily, Anakin Skywalker is willing to bend some rules and sends his Padawan Ahsoka Tano to go aid Senator Chuchi. The two also happen to be pretty good friends. The two decide to head back to Pantora. Ahsoka suspects that the sisters are being held on the blockade above the planet. Meanwhile, the Baron and Ion go back to the apartment and search for clues. The local police, who again were terrible, missed an obvious clue, the statue that Che had used to bash one of the intruders over the head with. The Baron finds some green blood on the bottom of it, quickly scans it with his datapad, and finds out that it belongs to a Rodian, and not just any Rodian, but the one who shot second. The information says that Greedo is based on Tatooine, which is where the Baron and Ion quickly head. Meanwhile, on board a Trade Federation ship, a part of the blockade over Pantora, Senator Chuchi and Ahsoka, who is disguised as a servant, are greeted by a Trade Federation administrator. Chuchi dangles the possibility of Pantora joining the Separatist Alliance and suggests that negotiations over terms begin. This gives them perfect cover to stay aboard and sneak around and figure out what the hell is going on. Later that night, they sneak into the administrator's office and overhear him speaking with the captain about the current situation. The captain objects to the kidnapping of the Baron's daughter, especially the part where she's being held on his ship. Now all Chuchi needs to do is find out where she is. The two head towards the detention area on the ship, unaware that the administrator is watching them. Luckily, Ahsoka is there with her lightsaber, and when she finds Che, she easily dispatches the guards. On the way out to the detention area, Ahsoka runs into another squad of super battle droids led by the administrator and takes them out as well. Before she can turn her blade on the administrator, though, the ship captain arrives with his own guards. The captain claims to know nothing of the kidnapping, creating a relatively awkward situation. Senator Chuchi quickly takes advantage of the situation and offers to forget about the whole kidnapping as long as he withdraws the blockade. The captain of the Trade Federation ship, who never really agreed to the kidnapping, withdraws his forces from orbit. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, Senator Lot Dod announces to the Senate that he is dismayed to find that a Separatist infiltrator had orchestrated a kidnapping of the Jedi and Senator Chuchi. It's a strong attempt to distance the Trade Federation from Newt Gunray and his pro-Separatist faction. But ultimately, it allows Trade Federation to deal with basically whoever they want. It also keeps Pantora free for now. Meanwhile, Baron Papa Nuyida and Ion have arrived on Tatooine and go directly to Jabba's palace and request the services of Greedo. This should immediately raise red flags. Greedo is a terrible bounty hunter and criminal. Anyone stuck with hiring him is probably very desperate. One of Greedo's girls lets Greedo know about the Pantorans looking for him. Greedo correctly guesses that the Baron is here about the kidnapping and moves quickly to silence him. Greedo and his thugs surprise the Baron and Ion and take them captive. But Papa Nuyida is not just a playwright, he's also a badass and quickly turns the tables on Greedo and pulls a knife on him and brings him in front of Jabba for an audience. The Baron appeals to Jabba, who also is a father. The Pantoran doesn't want any trouble, he just wants his daughter and then he'll go home. So Jabba makes Greedo show the Baron where exactly he's hidden his daughter. The Rodian takes him to a sketchy bar in Mos Eisley full of armed thugs. Luckily, the Pantorans are all pretty capable fighters, and they manage to overwhelm the thugs. Ion gets a few kills in, but again, it's the Baron who goes ham on the thugs and whips out 2 blasters and goes John Wick mode. Mission complete, and the Pantorans are free once again, and the sisters are back home. As you can see, the Separatists have many different ways to influence colonies and worlds, and they're really not above doing things like kidnapping or blackmailing other factions. It's pretty rough out there, especially on the outer edge of the Outer Rim. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of this series. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.